Welcome to the Big4AccountingFirms.com podcast. This is episode 28, and we're going to be covering the Oscars again today. More and more news is coming out every day about PwC and the partners at the Oscars. First, I wanted to speak about the two partners that worked at the Oscars for PwC, Martha Ruiz and Brian Cullinan. They have now both been fired from the Oscars engagement since our last podcast. They are no longer going to be working counting ballots for the Oscars. Oscars says they're going to keep PwC on the engagement for now, but they are considering whether they're going to keep them going forward. And they're going to assess whether they're going to keep them going forward. Now, in some other news with regards to this, there's some pretty bad pictures that came out this week of Brian Cullinan tweeting backstage. And in those photos, you can see multiple envelopes in his hand. And that was the problem, is that he had the Best Actress envelope and the Best Picture envelope. So he ended up giving the wrong envelope to Warren Beatty. But these pictures were pretty bad. They showed him going to town on his phone with social media updates right before Warren Beatty announced the Oscar. And this shows the real reason why these two got fired. It was the fact that they failed to act after Faye Dunaway announced the wrong winner. Both Martha Ruiz and Brian did not go on stage to correct their errors. Many people were asking, why did Martha Ruiz get fired? It was Brian who screwed up. That's true, but Martha Ruiz did not correct the error. And there's been plenty of media and plenty of things showing that one of PwC's primary jobs at the Oscars is to memorize the winners in case something like this happens. If somebody announces the wrong winner, they have it memorized and they go rush on stage and they fix it right away. But these two waited minutes. And there's even articles that are coming out of the producer and the stage manager saying that they had to push Brian and Martha Ruiz on stage to correct their error. And even after they had been pushed on stage, they had to be told to correct it. They didn't want to do anything. And the stage manager was saying that these two just weren't meant for the job, that they were nice people, but they just couldn't cut it in this high pressure situation. And what's interesting now is all this news keeps coming out is it's how big of a situation this is. For example, today I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts, which is the Bill Simmons podcast, and he had Jimmy Kimmel on there, and this was one of Jimmy Kimmel's first interviews since the Oscars. He said he really hasn't done that many interviews. And what the funny part of this is that these people aren't accountants at all, and they're still talking about the Oscars. And Bill Simmons, he's just a sports journalist and covers sports and pop culture, and Jimmy Kimmel is a comedian. And all they could talk about is how big this Oscar screw-up was. Bill Simmons even went so far as to say that it's going to be one of the first paragraphs in Jimmy Kimmel's obituary that he was part of the biggest Oscar screw-up in history. And Jimmy Kimmel laughed it off and said he really doesn't hope so. And then Bill Simmons said, I don't think you know how big of a deal this is. This is still going to be a big deal in a few months. When he said that, all I could do was shake my head. When this first came out about PwC screwing up at the Oscars, I thought it was a huge deal for PwC. But I didn't even think it would be as big as it is for them now. Just sit back and think about it. Their name and their brand, PwC, for the average American is now going to equal the biggest Oscar mistake in history. I mean, that's crazy. And I don't think Tim Ryan, Bob Moritz, and all of them have digested that. Because right now they're standing behind Brian Cullinan and Martha Ruiz. And I commend them a little bit for that. But I don't think they realize how damaging to their brand this is. There's going to be case studies about this in marketing, advertising, about how much damage you can do to your brand in situations where you don't realize. PwC took this engagement for granted. As you could tell, as Brian Cullinan with social media and all this, they didn't check in on him and make sure he was going to do a good job. And now they're going to pay the price for that. And also, and additionally, there was even more stories this week about Brian Cullinan trying to become a celebrity himself. And this is what I've been saying on prior podcasts and in prior posts on our website, was that this guy was trying to become a celebrity. And now there's stories coming out that he wanted to do a sketch at the Oscars. He went so far as to pitch an idea to the producers of the Oscars. He wanted to be on stage with Martha Ruiz and do a sketch with Jimmy Kimmel. And that's what I've been saying all along, that based on the press and the media that PwC is doing, they didn't highlight their integrity and their prowess as accountants. They highlighted about, hey, we're good at social media. We've got this social media thing down. We've got publicity down. We're part of this. We're not PwC. We're we're not PwC, the boring accountants. We're PwC, the exciting accounting firm that rubs shoulders with celebrities, and you can equate us with celebrities. And like I said, I've been talking about this before, but it's more specifically Brian Cullinan that wanted to be the celebrity. He had been taking pictures with celebrities in last year's Oscars, tugging the briefcase, making jokes, and he was snapping as many pictures as he could with celebrities. And I mean, that's what happened backstage is he got in trouble because he was too busy taking pictures of Emma Stone and making sure they got tweeted and not paying attention to Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway. And that just shows how much he wanted to be involved in the media process of this. And I think that should give some hesitation to PwC as to whether they should keep him. It was pretty evident how this error could occur and that it was in danger of occurring. And PwC did not take steps to monitor his social media, and they did not make sure that he was ready for the stage. And now they have to pay a severe price for this. You know, it's new staff. It's interns that have to take the training about social media and making sure everything's right. Now it's going to be interesting to see what PwC does to their senior partners, because now they're going to have to get social media training because they're the ones that aren't trained up. They're the ones that have been exempted from these kinds of trainings. Another thing that came out was that Martha Ruiz and Brian Cullinan now have private security that's being paid for by PwC because they've been threatened. Their lives have been threatened, and aerial photos of their houses and maps to their houses have been published online. And that's really a shame. And they're being treated like celebrities from that perspective too. And that now that the paparazzi are following them and following their families. And there's even photos of Brian Cullinan's wife going shopping with the bodyguard. I think that's pretty serious. And I think that's a shame, along with all the media coverage and podcasts I listen to that really shows me how big this issue is growing. It's far bigger than I think PwC believes. And I think they need to go ahead and get a little bit more serious about this and start addressing it. And that's ultimately, I think Brian is going to have to retire or resign. Most likely, I believe he will resign. I think PwC is standing behind him right now because of his leadership position and his years of service. But as these things keep snowballing, I don't think they can keep standing by him. Additionally, I don't think he'll be able to stay at PwC himself. It would be hard for anybody to put up with the embarrassment and the looks that he is going to get from his peers and his clients. That would be a big task for somebody that was mentally tough and prepared for it. The question is he mentally tough enough? And is he ready to handle all of that? I don't think he is. And I don't think PwC is prepared to stand behind a man that is going to get a lot of heat in the coming weeks and months. I really wouldn't wish this situation upon anybody. And I hope that he ends up okay on the other side. And with that being said, thanks for listening to the podcast. Make sure to visit our website, thebig4accountingfirms.com. Also, make sure to subscribe to this podcast. And I wanted to let you know that if you need help with Big Four recruiting, we have a book available on Amazon.com, the Big Four Recruiting Guide. So make sure to check that out if you need help with recruiting. Thanks for listening and have a good day.